Yo, what's up, everybody? I'm glad you're here. Hopefully, all of the pieces are working properly. Let me know if there's any issue whatsoever with the sound, just because we are going to be talking about a lot of stuff today. So, I'm not going to do any music just because I keep getting dinged on both these platforms. I'm currently live on Instagram and I'm not Instagram, I'm TikTok and YouTube. And so, I am just checking out just to make sure I don't get dinged anymore. So just give me a second. Let me just confirm that we're all good to go on all of the pieces, and then we'll get this thing started. We are going to be talking about Nagging Rights today. You can see a screenshot from the project that we're working on. And so, yeah, this is gonna be fun. Make sure this is working, because last time, last time I did this, I was japping for about 8 minutes, and then I my mic wasn't on. So that's no good. So let me make sure that we're good to go, and then I'll be ready to go in a second. All right, cool. So if you are here and you're excited to be here, just drop a comment in the chat. Just let me know, and then we'll go from there. But I'm gonna give a few minutes to let everybody join. So give me a second. Give me like literally 2 minutes, and then we will go from there, and then we'll get started. All right. And if I have any musicians out there that want to create some original music so I don't get dinged anymore, by all means, let me know. Because let's see. Warning. What is this warning? Give me 2 seconds. Close that. Stream's current bit rate is lower than recommended. Okay, so don't know how to change that just yet, but I'll fix that in a second. But we are live. We are good to go. All right, cool. So to officially begin, welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here on this random Saturday. Typically on Saturdays, I am streaming. Well, I will be streaming my gaming stuff, um, because at the end of the day, I am a variety streamer. So Wednesdays and Thursdays, Wednesdays is all of this creative stuff that we're going to be talking about today. Thursday is about funding and investing for said creative stuff. And then Saturdays are going to be my gaming, let's hang out and just do nothing and just vibe days. But because of the technical issues that I had on Wednesday, you guys actually missed out because it was live on Twitch, live on Instagram, and that worked out relatively well. But you know, my friends here on YouTube and also TikTok didn't get a chance to see any of the stuff, and so it's just like I don't want to leave you guys out. I love you, so I came and decided to switch a gaming day because I'm still waiting to get this additional game that I've been waiting for my PlayStation, and so yeah, I decided to come back and give you some sauce, some fun, some goodness for the creative side that you missed on Wednesday. So, if you've been following the channel at all in any sense of the word, we had been talking about Nagging Rights. It's one of the first. This is the flagship project for the studio that I'm building, Lighthawk Studios. And granted, while Lighthawk has been around for years, um, I took a step back these past 2 years just to kind of refocus and redefine the studio because it was becoming a little bit of everything, and that was never the design of it. It was always meant to be a what do you call it? A studio, a scripted studio focusing on film and TV projects. But because of the nature of the industry, I was doing documentary stuff, I was doing corporate stuff, I was doing commercial stuff, and even social media stuff. And so it was just a wide breadth of a lot. And it made more sense for me to start breaking them up into individual companies as opposed to trying to do everything under one umbrella. Because from a purely marketing standpoint, the messaging was a little different for each one. And it was also, honestly, a little confusing for people trying to understand, what the company does and who actually is the customer for it. Who am I trying to service and help? So, like I said, it took some time to reevaluate, reassess, and redefine what the point of the company is, why does it exist, and that sort of thing. And so, Nagging Wrights is something that we had worked on for a while. It's been a long time coming, and this particular project is designed to both showcase us as a scripted entity that does really high quality productions, and tells great stories and that sort of thing, but also make the investment a little easier to digest, because some of the other projects that we have in our pipeline, they're fantastic, and I would love to create them right now, but from a purely uh, investment perspective, those are a lot riskier to take because they're expensive. They're way more expensive than nagging rights is. I haven't done the budget because we haven't completed the full script for each one, but just from a purely developmental conceptual idea, these will be millions for the budget. Not just a couple 100,000, but literal millions for the budget. So, it's important to make sure that we build this in the right way so that we can get to these bigger, more ambitious projects, but also maintain the sense of story that we're telling with this flagship. Because this isn't a throwaway project. This is still a very unique project, a very good story, and that sort of thing. And these characters are very compelling. And at the end of the day, no matter what story that we tell, no matter how fantastical it gets, how big it gets, or whatever, it all comes down to who are these characters and are they grounded? Are they real? Can you connect with them as an audience? And so that's what I've been focusing on as a company for these past couple months, the past couple years, as I took a step back to really redefine what the company Lighthawk Studios is. And so today is going to be the first of many of these type of projects where I break down a scene. The point is to, obviously promote the series that we're producing, but also showcase the what it took to get there mentality or mindset. These are all things that, with me helming the project as the director and the producer, these are all things that you can kind of get an idea of who I am as a filmmaker. And so, what do I look for when I create these scenes? How do I work with these actors? How do I work with the team? And that sort of thing. And so, it's really important to start showcasing a lot of these different projects and what it takes to get there, because that gives us credibility. And at the end of the day, that's the point. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the scene. This is from episode 108. So, this is the eighth episode. Yo, what's up, One Trick Pony? Glad you're here, my friend. So we're going to be looking at the scene that I directed. This is episode 108. And the thing is, what's it called? With this being the eighth episode out of 10, there's a reason why this scene is showing up right here in episode 8. It's not just some random thing. So let's watch the scene. And then we're going to break into how I put it together. All right, here we go. Oh, wait, you can't even see it. Let's go to the desktop. There we go. If you were on YouTube, you couldn't see it. But TikTok, you should have been able to see it. Let's make sure. Yeah, you can see that. Okay, great. Cool. So let us press play and we should be good to go. Cool, 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 cool. All right, here it comes.
Mikey, wake up. Did you hear me?
Absolutely, I did.
What did I say?
What does every single person on earth have to do on a daily basis?
Behold, laundromats.
What am I looking at?
Our future. Everyone has to wash clothes, but not everyone has a washer and dryer. And if they don't have a washer and dryer, they have to go to the laundromat. But everybody hates going to the laundromat, but ours would be different. Hot food, premium snacks, a DJ, folding tables.
Why would anybody?
Even the most basic business model has a 95% success rate. Imagine what ours would have.
Do you know how much this will cost?
Of course I do.
$500,000?
Yeah.
for startup costs. Lacey, are you out of your mind? We don't have the money for this. Not to mention the money that we already have tied up in your current businesses. What about the job you got?
First, don't do that. I understand that there are obstacles, but obstacles are just solutions that haven't been figured out yet. And second, my business is a premium. Okay? Not everyone needs what I have, but this is guaranteed to print money.
Are you hearing yourself? What are you thinking?
Okay, you were just talking about my job. I make pennies there. Pennies, you know this. You do the budget.
I do. And I'm wondering why you think we have the money for this.
You know what? Why is it whenever you want to do something, we find a way? But when I want something, it's, oh, wait, Liz, we have to check the budget first.
Lacey, I'm tired. We can't keep doing this. I cannot get another job. We cannot take out another loan. Your big dreams cost big money.
Babe, I'm tired too. You think I want you working all these jobs all the time? You think I want to stay at my job forever? I hate that place. I am suffocating. And for what? To be stuck in the same place? I'm tired of living like this, aren't you?
More than you know, babe.
I need change. I need real change. This is not the life I had in mind for us.
You want change? This is not how you get it. You know, you talk about routine, but every year it's the same thing with you. New dreams, new hopes, new goals, new businesses. And when they all fail, like they always do, me picking the pieces up, not you. I'm not doing this anymore.
You walk away like your daddy did.
Do not compare me to my father. My father? He's never been here. I've always been here, holding you up. Me. 2, 3, 4, and 5 jobs. Me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was such a burden to you, Michael.
A burden? A burden will be welcome. A burden is a flat tire. A burden is a missed phone call. You're a drain. That's what you do, Lacey. You drain me.
Chicken wings?
Veggie fried rice.
Right. So, as you can see, this is a very emotional scene. There's a lot of stuff going on. So, the big question is, what was the process to go from basically the lighthearted tone in the very beginning to where it escalated to the point where smacked the cup out of her hand to this reconciliation at the end. And so, those were the three main pieces of this scene. Excuse me. But of course, getting from point A to point B to, point C to end it, there is a lot of conversations that had to happen. So let's first start with the actors. So before we even get to what do you call it? The rehearsals and that sort of thing, I actually pulled each one of them aside because I don't know about you, but I'm married. And if you've ever been in a conversation where two people have very competing ideas of what is actually the right way, there's going to be conflict. It doesn't matter that, they're married, doesn't matter that they love each other. They're still two very different people. You know what I mean? And so they're coming at it from a place where it makes all the sense in the world that their perspective is right. Right. And so that automatically breeds conflict. That's first and foremost. Secondly, um, they both have competing ideas on how to get to the end result. Because if you listen, they both want the same thing. And I think that's key because they're not necessarily against each other. The only thing that's different is how do they get there? That's what's different. And so the idea of pulling each actor apart and having different conversations with them is very intentional because the idea is I want to give them different direction so that they have something that they are not aware of from the other that they can react genuinely to. So let's start with Brandy. She's playing Lacey. You can see her here. So one of the things that I told her was that she is the very much a ready, fire, aim kind of person. She doesn't necessarily think all the way through whatever scenario she presents. All she sees is the end result. If I do this, then this is going to happen. The stuff in the middle is just noise, you know. Yes, I got to figure it out. Yes, of course, you know, the reality of the situation is yes, of course, but at the end of the day, I don't care. I care about will this will this potentially solve the problem? And if yes, I'm going to do it. And so that's what her perspective is. Because at the end of the day, she's been doing all the other little stuff, all the things that you're supposed to do, like in her case, getting a regular stable job, you know, keeping that job and trying to, you know, keep some kind of stable income coming into the household. But for her, being the creative person as she is, it's actually in a way suffocating her. You know, obviously not physically because she can still breathe, but figuratively, she's, the walls are closing in. She can't thrive in that place. A good example is if you take a fish out of water and tell it to live on the land, it's not going to survive very long because it's not designed to live on the land. It's designed to live in the water. And the same thing is happening with Lacey here. She's not designed for this type of work. She's not designed for the four walls of a cubicle. But that's where she is, right? And so for her, she's like, I got to get out of here. All of my hopes and dreams, everything that makes me who I am, I can't get being here. And this has been years. I've been trying for so long, and I'm not where I need to be. But I can't give up because I can't go and do this because this isn't going to work either. This is going to kill me faster than this will, And so, with her, she's like, you know, coming to Michael with another idea because for her, this is again the way out of their current, situation. Just to give you some context, because this is episode 8, they're in some financial crisis. They have some bills, they got some debt, they got some things that they're trying to overcome so that they can finally move forward and not be on the hamster wheel anymore. And that's something that Lacey is genuinely feeling. She's like she's running on a hamster wheel. She's doing all of this work and effort, but yes, she's not going anywhere. She's in the same exact spot, but now she's more tired, right? And so with this conversation, like she's like um adamant this has to work because in her mind she is adapting her sequence. Before it was all about her hopes and dreams, like her business. She even says her business is a luxury, not everybody wants that, but this is guaranteed to print money because she's like, okay, my current business isn't a necessity, it's a want. Everybody, people will want this, but it's not a need, and so not everybody's going to go and buy it. Like she's not going to Walmart every day, or somebody's not going to her business like they would go to Walmart almost every day for like groceries and that sort of thing, right? And so she was looking for a way out of that with this particular business, which is a laundromat, because everybody needs to wash their clothes, right? And if you Google successful boring businesses, the laundromats actually pop up. That's where the idea for this scene came from. If she's not doing this, she still wants to be a business owner. What can she do that is a what do you call it? A safe quote business. So, that is one of the things that is really important for her to figure out. But getting to the direction of the scene, so I painted that picture for her as I was talking to her about just what is Lacey's goal in this scene, because it's always about motivation. What are we trying to accomplish by having this conversation and having the audience watch this conversation, right? And so the thing that I told her is that she needs to be right. She has to be right. So no matter what, be right. And just that conversation of being right really put implanted in her mind the idea that she needs to stand her ground. Because if you look at it, as things escalate, she doesn't back down. She's not like, oh yeah, you're right, Michael, let me just forget about this idea. She's like, no, we are going to do this. You always figure it out when it comes to you. We're going to figure it out for me this time too. And so one of the really great things about this is when Michael, again, being a physically more imposing character than she is, because he's literally taller, literally heavier, has bigger arms, bigger, chest, that kind of stuff. So he can be physically imposing. And as he gets in her face, you know, you can see her stand her ground, even though she's, quote, the tinier one, even though she's, quote, smaller than her. It's really, I told her, she needs to be right. So nothing is going to get in the way of that. And so I love the defiance in her face when Michael gets in her face. You know what I mean? But in addition to that, um, the other half of the be right direction that I gave her was also the poke the bear kind of idea. So if you notice throughout the entire thing, I don't want to say antagonizing him at first, but she is poking the bear. Like when she slaps him with the presentation pamphlet. She's like, "Did you hear me?" That kind of stuff. She's trying to make him pay attention to her because for whatever reason, and I can't get into that without giving away too much of the story, she's feeling neglected, like he's not been paying attention, he's not been supporting her, he's not been doing what he needs to do for her, right? So that was another piece of direction that I gave her was, poke the bear when you feel like he's not listening to you. And so that poke the bear moment, or that poke the bear direction, starts to escalate when the conversation escalates. It goes from just a playful, "Did you hear me?" to "Oh yeah, walk away like your father did," right? She didn't need to say that. And that was her just getting frustrated with, the fact that again, he's shutting her down. He's the one, in this case, she's blaming him. He's the one preventing her from getting where she wants to be. So that was the direction that I gave Brandy before this whole scene began. And then when it comes to, so that's going from the beginning, the lighthearted, let me just show you what I'm thinking, to the escalation, and then how do we find our way back? So it was really important to establish the idea of safe spaces. Um, and I know a lot of people have an issue with that term, but roll with me, right? Um, the idea was that with them being together, there was conflict. And so we needed a reason for them to separate so we can de-escalate and calm the situation down. And looking at this scene here, you can see, and I'll play it again. Michael was heading towards his recliner here. That's his safe space. That's what we defined. And for her, it was the couch over here. But you can see they are on opposite sides of the frame, and that was intentional. Excuse me. We wanted to make sure that when they did separate, there was literal space between them where they couldn't, be in, vicinity with each other, even if they're sharing the same frame. And so I'm going to play for you one of the rehearsals that we worked through, um, just so you can kind of get an idea of what we were talking about.
I'm doing all of this for us, for you. And then you go sit on his lap.
In my safe space. I'm safe here.
So you can hear her talking about, "You're in my safe space, you're in my safe space." And that was a funny moment because Matthew, that was our AD that she sat on. He was sitting exactly where she needed to go because he didn't hear me give her that direction to go sit over here. But you can see as he's getting in her face more and more and more, she retreats to her safe space. And again, that was very intentional. Yes, that was a rehearsal. And so the acting, the emotion wasn't quite where it needed to be. That's why we were rehearsing, just to get the blocking and everything right and saving all of that for the actual take. But the point is, you could see how she's like, "Okay, I can't deal with this anymore. Let me walk away." You know what I mean? But when I'll play it again just so we can, have a fresh in our mind. But when he says that she drains him, that was her moment where she's like, oh, I didn't realize that. This is the first time that he's ever said that to me. He's always been the super strong, I can take on everything kind of guy. And so I'm just going to keep, again, poking the bear, seeing how far I can push because I'm not even thinking about him breaking. He's not going to break to me, but he breaks. She pushes, 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 and then he breaks. And so, it was one of those things where um, it was important for her as her being the one, essentially the antagonist of the scene, where she's poking, poking, poking. She needs to be the one to let it calm back down. And so that's why she walks away first. And he's still standing because he's still in his zone. And we'll get into his direction in a little bit. But you can hear, we're going to play it again after I explain this, but you can hear her say very softly, chicken wing. And for them, that's one of their code words. And she even asks it as a question. She's unsure if this will even work because again, she doesn't realize she until this moment that she was actually breaking him. And and again, in the context of this being episode 108, why is she telling this story here? Because this is a flashback. I don't know if I didn't preface the scene with this, but this scene right here is actually a flashback. She's telling this story to somebody else, and I'm not going to tell you who she's telling it to. But the point is, there's a reason why she's telling it here, and that revelation of her being the reason why Michael is broken right now um, was a big eye opener for her as she's going through this retelling as she gets to this point. And so, it's really really important. It's really great that she took that direction, she internalized it, and she asked it as a question because in the script it was actually just a statement. It was just chicken wing. I just want to end this. But as we spoke through the scene with both actors and we spoke through some of the emotional beats and that sort of thing, it made more sense as a question. Like she's unsure, can I even approach him because is he willing to let me back in? And so you can see him recognizing how far he had gone because again he tries not to go there, and again I'll explain it when we get to his direction, but you can see him immediately relax the tension and just let go of it, and they reconcile after he says his code word that everything is safe. But it was important that he is the one that makes a step to come to her versus the other way around. She opened the door, he needs to be the one to walk through it, right? And so they come back, they reconcile, and then they come back and kiss. So let's watch it again, this moment that from here, and you can see all the things that I'm talking about. And I'll narrate it because you don't need to hear it, you've already heard it. Um, so let's go from here. So I'll just narrate what's going on just to reiterate what I said. So he walks away to try and de-escalate, and she pokes the bear right there, causing him to come back and get in her face. And that was the trigger for him. Again, I'll talk about more why talking about his father was a trigger for him, but it was really really important to have this level. And so there's that standoff, the don't back down, and he's like, okay, well, let me just walk away because I don't want to deal with this anymore. And remember, I said don't let him win. Now she's poking the bear again. And there's a reason why we stayed on this shot here. And I'll explain that when we get into the other production side of this conversation. But she's still standing up to him. She's still, looking him in the face, being like, you're not going to win this argument. This is not a thing. But right here, when he says that he's broken, she breaks him, she walks away because she's like, oh, snap. Ooh, that actually hurt me. And you can see just in her body language. And again, there's a reason why we're staying this far away for this moment. So she says chicken wing, and watch Michael react when she says that. Right there. You see? He has that recognition of I took this too far. And then he comes back to her. And they connect. They reconnect. And that reconnection is very, very important. Because now, again, it shows that they're not enemies. It shows that they're not on different sides of this thing. They want the same thing, but they just want two different ways of getting there. All right. So that's working through all of Lacey, all of her direction. So let's talk about Michael. Michael is the kind of guy where he is that very protector kind of guy. He's the one that's going to do whatever he can for his wife, even at the detriment to himself. And so for us to get to this scene, he had been doing that for years. They've known each other for a long time, since they were kids, basically. And when they finally got together to be, um, to be married, basically, he took on that "I gotta take care of her" perspective. You know what I mean? And so, um, sorry, I got distracted by another notification on TikTok. But anyway, so with Michael, when Jason and I spoke about Michael's character, because Jason is the actor playing Michael, one of the things that we talked about is, who is he and why does he react the way that he does? Um, he's the kind of person that will internalize all of everything. He's not aware his emotions on his sleeve kind of guy. And so, even to the detriment to himself, he keeps things even from his wife, which is sad, but it's just the true nature of who he is. He doesn't want to show any weakness, because if he does, that means that he is weak, right? And in his mind, he can't reconcile being weak in a moment versus just being a weak person. Um, and when I say weak in the moment, that's just somebody needing help, not necessarily weak, because it takes strength to ask for help, right? And so, one of the things that is really was really important to convey to him was his sense of, "I'm done. I can't do this anymore." He even says, he drops his head, and I'll show you, when we replay his moments. He's tired. And it's not a like, "I'm tired of doing this." He's just spent. You can't give from an empty well. You can't draw from an empty well, right? And so that was the concept that I gave with him. He's empty at this point. He doesn't have anything else to give to her. He wants to do what will make her happy, but in doing so, it's caused them to be in a worse situation. It hasn't gotten any better over the course of however long they've been doing this. And for him, being that analytical, logical guy, it doesn't make sense to try yet another thing. And, it's gotten to a point where it's starting to affect him. Like I said, he's drained. And um, if he continues on this path, he can only blame himself for what happens to him, in the sense of, his fatigue, his exhaustion, his, unwillingness to do anymore. Right. And so this is him finally putting his foot down and saying no to Lacey, which is really unheard of, because it's not that he says yes to everything, but he always tries to find a way to make it happen, even if it's not exactly what she's asking for. If it's getting somewhere closer, somewhere in the vicinity of this, then he'll find a way to make it happen. Now that's his thing. So when speaking with him alone, I told him that we need to see that. We need to finally see him break, because up until this point, he's been very guarded. Even though we've seen genuine emotion from him, frustration or happiness or whatever, his true motives, his true motivating push, we've not really seen that, because again, he keeps everything close to the chest. He doesn't really show that to anybody. And so that part of his character is super, super important, because he hides the things that he needs to show, and that's never a good thing. And so when I was speaking to Jason about the character, and finally letting us see behind the curtain, so to speak, one of the things that I told him was, even though we know for a fact that Michael would never hit Lacey, we need to question as an audience, ooh, would he in this moment? Ooh, this is getting a little more intense than I've ever seen with Michael. Is he actually going to do something that he's going to regret? And so that's what I told him in his own private conversation. And I told him to internalize that. What does that actually mean? Because, we don't want to actually show any kind of domestic violence, because that's not the kind of relationship that they have. But again, in terms of escalating the conversation to where it needs to go, that's the feeling that we need to be able to create in that moment. And so one of the things that I love about working with both Brandy and Jason is that they're phenomenal actors, and so they come with a wealth of creativity on their own. But also we have a relationship, we have a rapport where they're willing to try different things. So, for example, this scene right here with the cup, this wasn't originally in the script. Originally, it was just they had this conversation, and then he walks away, and Brandy Lacey, he follows her. I'm sorry, she follows him into the living room. But as we were talking through the scene, and we were rehearsing, they were like, there needs to be one other trigger that gets him to explode. Yes, Lacey's frustrating him. Yes, Lacey is causing him, to get angry in this moment, but it's not enough to get us where we fully need to go. And I agreed with them, because I even felt that as we were going through the rehearsal, like there was something missing. And so they were like, "Hey, what if we tried this? What if he mentions his father, or what if she mentions his father? Because again, you told her to poke the bear. So what if Lacey mentions his father, knowing that that's a trigger? Because at this point, she knows he's right, and so with her giving the direction of don't let him win, she needs to do something to basically get back on top. And so, with her mentioning his father, knowing that that's a trigger, and also that connects to something that we saw in a previous episode that again I'm not going to tell you about because we haven't. I'm not. I want you to go watch it, basically. um, that was a way to connect Michael's journey in this whole process. And so I was like, yes, that's a fantastic idea. Let's try it. And so we rehearsed it, with the cup. And again, once that happened, that slap of the cup, watch. So he's trying to, you know, de-escalate. He's trying to be like, okay, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. And she mentions right here, walk away like your daddy did. She did not need to say that, like I mentioned earlier. And so that moment right there with him slapping the cup away, that was the emotional trigger to get him to explode like this, because he had already said what he needed to say, and he was walking away trying to de-escalate because again that's his character. But with Lacey poking the bear, that gave him another reason to say even more. So yeah, it's very important to. I'm just watching it again without the sound, just because I can feel the tension that created. And so you can see that standoff, that like that who's going to win, and that question of is this going to get any worse, right? And so again, he said what he needed to say, and what do you call it? He's trying to de-escalate, but Lacey refuses to poke the bear. And so one of the things that I told Jason was you don't want to have this conversation, but you feel like you need to at this point. Again, if you don't say it, you're only going to have yourself to blame when things continue to fall apart. And you are at a point where you need to put a stop to it. And so that's the direction that I gave him. So that kind of encapsulates, what I said to the actors, how I work with them, and even again, the collaboration that came with them, because it's important to recognize that I'm not going to have all of the ideas. I may be able to create the sandbox that we're going to play in for the world, but it's up to the actors to what do you call it, to play with the toys that are in that sandbox, right? And so that's one of the things that I really recognize as a director. That's how I direct things. I don't need them to yell here or do this, that, and everything else. Like I don't need a bullet list point of things that they need to do. All I want to do is paint the picture of what are we trying to accomplish? What is the arc of the scene? What are we trying to go from point A to point B to point C? What are those moments? And then let the actors fill in the gaps. Because one of the reasons why casting took so long was because I wanted to find the right people that understood that. I want them to have the freedom to explore who these characters are, because yes, I may have been an actor at one point. I know how to act. I've been to acting class, right? But at the end of the day, they are the ones actually feeling the feelings and doing the actions in front of the camera. So they need to be the ones to feel the things. And so what is it going to take to get them to feel those certain things and be able to portray them in a way that's realistic? Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that these characters are real. Even though they are fictional beings and we've scripted what they're going to say, when you watch this scene, it doesn't feel like it's scripted. It feels like this is an actual argument that between two different people. And so um, and more on that later, because actually people after we filmed the scene and the crew, they all came up to me and started saying different things, which was really cool. So if I don't remember, somebody in the chat, please just remind me that I'm going to talk about what the crew said after we filmed the scene. But one of the reasons why I'm lingering on this shot right now as we're speaking is very intentional, because when we were filming this, I was talking to my DP, Fraser, and we had a bunch of coverage left to do after we filmed this setup. Um, and it was close-ups of her as she's sitting down, being all in her mind after she said what she said, close-up of him, there's even when she's walking away right here, when she's walking away, she says her line with her back to camera. And technically, that is a filmmaking no-no. We want to actually see who's saying, whatever dialogue. But one of the reasons why we decided to stay on this shot, it was so funny because like after we filmed it, um, I was thinking to myself, I don't need to see anything else. This is the moment. This is how we end the scene. And my DP Fraser came up to me afterwards and he was like, I don't want to see anything else. And I was like, it's funny you say that because I was thinking the same exact thing. Because again, one of the things that's really important is to capture the uh, capture the correct feeling, the correct tension, the correct vibe, so to speak. Because again, that's what people are connecting to when they watch it. And so with us staying, we were close to them, especially in this argument scene. We were relatively tight on them, and so we're all up in their space. We're in the we're in the argument with them, right? And so as it starts to escalate, as an audience member, I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to take a step back because now I'm intruding. It feels like I'm intruding. And so, again, even through all this stuff, I'm replaying it just for the sake of narration. But, we're well in their space. We're right up there next to them because I wanted you to feel how intense this is, literally yelling in her face, a few inches from her face, and getting her to not want to back down and feeling that um disrespect almost, but also that um rebellion from him. She's not gonna let him win. But right as she walks away, notice camera doesn't follow her. Camera stays right here. And so now we're in this wide shot because we needed to give them space. They need space and they don't recognize it yet. That's why they're still talking. But we as an audience, it felt more natural for us to take a step back and let them breathe because it felt intrusive to be in their space right now. It almost felt like a uh, um, over reliance on trying to cut around certain things because that's not what the genuine thing is that's happening in the scene. We needed to see them separate and be on opposite sides of the frame. We needed to see them come back together in the same frame because all of these things are happening together. And if we had cut around that to, again, show Brandy's reactions as she's sitting on the couch and all of that jazz, we would lose that tension. We would lose that. And um, after we watched it back, me and my DP, we were just like, yeah, no, we need to stay right here, and this is where the scene ends because that's where we can feel the tension release. If we did that in a cut happy edit, we would lose that and it just wouldn't have the level of satisfaction and again that reconnection that they needed. um and then also, as much as I want to give my editor a lot of freedom and variety to create the scenes, um there are some times where I'm going to force the editor to do things a certain way because the way that we filmed it on set was exactly what needed to happen. you know Here, for example, we have this two shot, we have his coverage, we have her coverage at the table. So there's a lot of variety. Like if I give this to my editor, or a different editor rather, because of the options that that person may have, there's going to be a different version of this edit that will say the same thing. But when we get here, this is the only way to end it, because as we agreed on set, that was the only way to end it. So I'm not going to give the editor options to end it any other way. So those are all things that I think are really important in terms of creating the scene. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, so the code word moment, what do you call it? I think that going back to the script, I didn't mention my screenwriter and not the whole how the whole process started. So one of the things that Portia, my screenwriter, did was ask me a ton of questions about who these characters are. And when we spoke at length about, some of the little, I mean, I don't, not even little, but the different idiosyncrasies of each person, there were certain things that really stood out to her. And with Lacey being the the chaotic, sporadic person, she would be the person to just blurt out something random. And so, remember, I mentioned that she is telling the story to somebody. She mentions that same code word to that person, and there's no context. She just blurts it out, and she was like, "Okay." Well, the person that's listening, that person was like, "Okay, well, I don't know what that means. Why are you saying chicken wing? It makes no sense, especially in the context of the conversation. Chicken wing, what does that mean?" And you could literally see on the person's face where it's just like, huh? And so I thought it was important to showcase why she would say that in that moment, because in that particular woman that I'm referring to, she is um, basically kind of the same idea. The wall is closing in, and she needs to back off. And she's like, I can't take anymore. This is me trying to de-escalate the situation. But in this case, she couldn't, and so I needed to let the audience know, where did that mindset come from? Where did that even come from? And so that was kind of the reason for this scene, one of the reasons for this scene. Um, but it had to be earned. Like we couldn't just put the word in there and be like, oh, okay, everything's great. Again, going back to what I said earlier, with the way that she said it here, it's very much a question, because she doesn't even know if this is going to work this time. It has in the past. This is what they've always said. This is what, because she only says it one other place here. This place and then the other scene that I was talking about. Those are the only two places where the code word thing shows up. And so this scene had a lot of work to do to really emphasize why, or emphasize the importance of that word. And so it was important to show, or for this scene to imply, that this has worked over and over and over and over again. But this time she's not so sure. You know what I mean? So she says the word chicken wing, questioning, is this going to, am I going to basically get my husband back? I'm worried about it. And, you know, being able to get us to that point where it's again that escalation and then that de-escalation, all of that was earned by the choices that they made. And I love that they again took the direction and kind of ran with it, because again, at the end of the day, they are the ones that are actually making the scene happen. We're just there to capture it at that point, because we've already established, we've set up the sandbox, like I mentioned. Now they have to play in it. And so yes, my job is to, to navigate that and to redirect if it starts to go off in a different path. um but in the same breath, they need to have the space to be able to do the things that they need to do, to make the scene happen, once I give them the direction and the framework that they have to work within. And so let's see, that really boils down the breakdown of the scene. I would love to hear whatever questions you guys have, that I didn't answer or I didn't even speak about, because there's still a lot to talk about. From a production design standpoint, from a what do you call it? Again, a DP slash camera and lighting perspective. There's a lot of things that we can talk about for this particular scene, because um, one of the things that I spoke about with my DP was the idea of that, even though this is a comedy at the very beginning, the comedy is a filter. with this being Lacey's story, Lacey is, like I said, retelling this story and all of these different moments to somebody else. And so with her being who she is as a character, she's the kind of person that will use her humor, her comedy as a deflection because a lot of people in real life do that. They crack jokes when they are um, uncomfortable or nervous or feeling something other than happy. That's their way of deflecting from what's truly happening within. And Lacey is very much that person. And so, to the point of what I was saying to my DP, even though this is a comedy, it's really not. It's a comedy, a drama at its core, but there are elements of comedy in it. So we wanted to make sure that from a camera and lighting perspective, it didn't feel like a slapstick comedy. And whenever we see drama, it's like, where did this come from? It had to balance. And so we took the approach of making this a very naturalistic kind of um, or hyper realistic sort of kind of world. Um, because in this moment right here, like you can see even she has a smile on her face. She's very lighthearted. And it's, more lit here than it is in the living room. Obviously the two scenes look like they work together. There's, same still the same lighting, still things that make sense. But this is way more dramatic. Look how much more shadow is here on their faces and stuff like that, as opposed to being here in the other kitchen, especially when they go sit down. That's where the main light is, right on the table. You can see it here, right there. Let me actually, can I draw it? Yeah, I can draw it right there. You can see this is where the light is. And so it's lighting the table and bouncing up on them. So again, everything was very, very, very intentional as far as how we pieced it together. So I'm going to get to some of the questions that are popping up. So what is the hardest part of directing a scene that what do you call it? Makes it emotionally intimate. I think I think the key to making things emotional is making it real. At the end of the day, we want to make sure. How do I get rid of this comment? Hit enter. Hang on. I'll answer that question in 2 seconds. This is bothering me. My OCD. How do I stop this? Okay. Well, I'll figure that out because now this is bothering me. There we go. Okay. Cool. And then should be able to delete this. All right. Well, I'll figure it out. But this is really bothering me. Okay. All right. It should be gone now. Okay, great. It's gone. Whew, that was bothering me. Okay. So again, going back to the what do you call it? The comedy versus drama, all of the emotional arcs that happen in the scene. How do I get them to feel the things? I think I kind of went over that with the conversations that I had with them individually, because again, with them being two different people, I think it's important to speak to them and give them different direction because they're going to have different perspectives. Any scene that works is going to have conflict, and any conflict is going to come from two different people or two different forces trying to achieve their goal, right? Excuse me. So, one of the things that was really important to me was to have a connection with each actor. Brandy, I've known the longest out of the two of them. I've known her for years. She and I used to actually act together in the commercials that we did when we were in Florida, and that's how she and I met. And Jason, I met years later, actually casting this project when we were doing it as a proof of concept. So he's one of the originals, and so is Lacey, so is Brandy. But so I have an relationship outside of this particular project that we've been able to establish over years of conversations and that sort of thing. And so there is a level of trust that they have with me and I have with them because, we've worked on other projects outside of Nagging Wrights. It's not just this project. Jason has his Finding You project that we've worked on, plenty of episodes there. Brandy has worked on a couple of other short films with me and some other projects or some other producers as well. So there's been a ton of stuff that we've done to establish a connection, establish a rapport, establish a workflow that works for all of us. But, you know, I think it comes down to trust. At the end of the day, with me trusting them and the choices that they've made, um, that really is what gives them the freedom to essentially let go of whatever inhibitions they have. Because they're trusting me with their feelings, they're trusting me with their emotions that they're going to have to wear on the sleeve as we go through this process. And while I may not necessarily know what well they are drawing from, for me, that's irrelevant. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that we can see that the feeling is there. And so giving them the trust and the freedom to do what they needed to do, I think that gave them the permission, so to speak, to allow themselves to be the level of emotion that we needed. All right. Let's see. Next question. How do you know when a take is the one? That's a great question. From a purely technical standpoint, when all of the pieces are right, for example, like um if the focus pull is locked in, if the dolly move is locked in, the timing of that type of stuff, all of those things have to be lined up. But once all of the technical stuff is lined up, it could still be a bad scene because the acting isn't there and the emotional arc isn't there and stuff like that. And so for me, after all the technical stuff comes to a checkbox basically, for me, it's a feeling. How do I feel watching this? Is this making me feel what I need to feel? And it's one of those things where like I'm not relying on a feeling, so to speak. It's like, but in the same breath, going back to what I said here about ending the scene, you know, it was that feeling of we don't need to do anymore. That instinct, I think instinct is a better word than feeling. That innate ability to understand this is complete. I don't need to do anything more. Because you can always tell um, when somebody has a level of experience behind them when they don't do 17 million takes. And yes, I have heard of directors, Stanley Kubrick comes to mind, where he did like hundreds of takes just so he has so many different options. And for me, I don't like to operate that way. Um, to me, that shows somebody that doesn't really know what they want and they don't know how to get what they need. Um, but that being said, Stanley Kubrick is one of the directors that is, known across time. So obviously he's done something right. So I'm not saying that to say that my way is better and his way is trash. All I'm saying is there's a different philosophy on how to get there for me. So, you know, for me, I don't want to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of takes to get to the final result. And for one, if I were the editor, I'd be so mad about that. I'm just straight up. But also, from a purely time perspective, with this being an independent production, we don't have time for all that, you know? And so for me, I want to get in, get out, keep it moving so I can film as much as I can with the allotted time that I have, with the finite amount of money that I have, because I don't have time to spend, you know, feeling the scene out and stuff like that. For me, it's like, okay, did we accomplish our goal? The goal was this. Has this scene accomplished that? Yes or no? Yes, we're moving on. And so has this take accomplished that? Because I don't need more than 3 or 4 takes. Yeah, if you look at every single take, I could probably bring them up, but it's on a different computer, a different hard drive. But if you looked at each take, there's going to be differences in between each one, because in between each take, I'm giving them direction. And so if I'm doing it again, obviously I'm trying to correct something, but that doesn't mean that I can't go back and use pieces of that previous take. It's just that looking at it from a full perspective of point A to point B, is this nice and complete? If not, then I'll go back and do it again. But once it is complete, in terms of like all of the technical checks are boxed, all of the or boxes are checked rather, all of the acting pieces are checked. Um, for me, I'm ready to move on. And I always have, I think this is my baseball background, but I do a 3 strike rule. If it takes me more than 3 takes, I'm doing something wrong and I'll go back and reassess and be like, okay, let's stop filming, let's fix this, and then go back to filming. So we're not wasting time and digital media / film to figure it out. So for me, that's how I figure out when something is enough. Let's see. What does a bad version of this scene look like? What could have gone wrong? So that's a great question. The immediate thing that comes to mind is the idea of the comedy versus drama. Um, because with comedy, especially for like sitcom type comedy, um, you can always tell when they're either trying to be funny. Like, for example, there was a scene in How I Met Your Mother when Lily was crying about something. I forgot what it was. And those were the fakest tears ever, right? And so, um, but it was supposed to be funny. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it was just like, that's not, that would have been going into the slapsticky comedy kind of thing. And that's not what this comedy series is. This isn't what this series is. It's not even, like I said, it's a comedy and a drama. There's funny bits and there's dramatic pieces. And so we had to straddle the line. And so in the beginning, with this being very lighthearted and stuff like that, it could have easily gone into a wrong direction where they're just trying to make each other laugh and stuff like that and trying to be super silly, especially like with the faces that they make here when she's like, "Oh, I'm impressed." "Oh, you were listening." Hmm? You know, that's pretty much the extent of the comedy, so to speak. And granted, yes, like, Lacey will make a face here. Where is it? Coming up. Like right here, she's gonna make a face after she looks up how much it's gonna cost. And so again, it's a nice little chuckle. And she's like, "Oh, whatever. I'm not even thinking about that." But at the end of the day, that could have turned into a longer moment or a crazier funny face moment. She played it just far enough where it was like, "Huh, that's funny." And then gets back into the reality of the scene. So for me, what could have gone wrong is going too far into the comedy. But also the inverse is true, going too far into the drama where it gets to be so intense that it's not believable. Like there's another example that I can remember where the whole thing is just an argument, and after a while, it starts to get to be like we as an audience get drained. It's like, okay, we get it. You guys are arguing. Stop with the arguing. And so I think Malcolm and Marie is the thing that I'm thinking of. And excuse me. So there's a delicate balance, you know what I mean? There's definitely a thing that you have to recognize when it's starting to push a little too far. And that's one of the things that we did in the screenwriting process, where we wanted to make sure that it doesn't go too far, and for too long in a certain direction before it starts to come back the other way. Yes, there are times where it lingers a little bit longer than it should. And I say should in quotation marks, where, we're like, okay, why are we still feeling this? But relating it back to who Lacey is, and again with her telling the story, that's what she's feeling in the moment. And so we have to stay there while she is there as well. So, yeah. All right, let's see. One more question. Da, 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 da. We already spoke about that. Spoke about that. What does this audience tell you about Michael and Lacey that the audience needs to feel before they understand it intellectually? That's a great question. I don't think that there is really an answer for that right now. Um, Part of it is just because um, you're watching this out of context. And so, again, this is episode 108. And so, by the time you get here, you have a very clear sense of who these characters are. But every single thing that we show you is either a repeat from another perspective, like somebody else's perspective versus just Lacey's, like it's the real version versus Lacey's skewed version, that kind of idea, or it is a revelation kind of perspective where Lacey is rethinking about a moment and she gets a further clarification of, oh, I can see why somebody would say that to me. I can see why I'm still feeling this. I can see why I'm still stuck here. That kind of idea. So the key isn't about going about it intellectually. It's just following the breadcrumbs. Um, from the very first episode to the very end, everything is connected. There's nothing random about anything that we see. And while it may feel random because it's out of sequence, it's out of place, when you go back and watch it as a whole, and that's the goal, I want you to be able to follow along along the journey without having all of the information. But then once you get all the information from, episode 1 to 10, and then you go back and rewatch it, you'll start to see all of those breadcrumbs were there the entire time. And I think that's where the intellectual portion comes in, where you can go back and rewatch it and see things that you missed that were there in front of you. You know what I mean? And I think from a filmmaking perspective, from a directing standpoint, I think it's really cool when you can go and do that. I do that for myself. I mean, Game of Thrones is a great example. I've seen that series like 5 or 6 times already, and it's a lot of content to watch, But each time I watch it, there's something that I didn't see because it's a big world for one. I'm not going to catch everything, even on several viewings, but also some things that I may have forgotten that I was so focused on this particular storyline that I missed it on this one. And so seeing those pieces come together is just like, oh, now there's more clarification. And again, I think that's what's going to happen when you watch this because surface level, you can follow it. Deeper level, you start to see even more to it. And that just goes to show the level of craft and a level of care that we put into this project because, at the end of the day, we want you to be invested into these projects. We want you to be invested into these characters because there was a lot of care and concern and again craft put into who these people are so that they will connect with you. And to that point, actually, I just remembered. So when we finished filming this scene, the a lot of the crew members came up to me afterwards and they were telling me how they connected to the story. And what was great is that every single person's experience was different, whether it reminded them of their parents having conversations like that and they needed to stay away. Kind of the same idea that I was talking about as far as, staying away once they were in the living room because I didn't want to intrude. It didn't feel safe to go with them in that space. A lot of the crew members had that same kind of feeling. Like, oh, I remember being, basically in my room overhearing the arguments that my parents had, and I didn't want to get any closer to them. Then, other people were like, I was those characters. I was having conversations like that, so this reminded me of my own personal experience, and so it was really cool hearing, these 3 or 4 different perspectives from these very different people, but how they all were able to connect to moments like this because, um, again, it's a real moment that people have lived. And again, even though it's scripted, even though it is a fake scene, so to speak, um, these are real emotions that are being conveyed, real life scenarios that are being conveyed. And that's what I love about this series because um, again, that goes back to who we are as a studio, who I am as a director. And these are the kind of stories that I want to tell, regardless of what world it's in, whether it's a realistic world like this or it's a fantasy world on some alien planet that we've never even heard of or seen. You know, it's still very important to um, ground everybody into something that is real, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings on Earth at the moment watching this. That may be different in the future. You maybe watching from Mars or something like that. But as of today in 2026, we're watching on Earth and it's humans watching it. So, you know, it's important to connect all of these things and things that we as humans can connect to. So, I'm going to end the stream here. That's basically the entire breakdown for this one particular scene. And I appreciate everybody for rocking with me up to this point. Um, this is one scene from, again, an entire series, and this is what we're currently working on. So this is still in production. So it's not available for release yet, but if you want to watch it, by all means, reach out to me and I'll get you on the pre-order list, because I'm excited to share this with everybody as we're starting to build and getting a little further. We did complete block 1. We're working on block 2 and the remaining blocks for the series. But a lot of good things are coming out of it, and I'm really excited to finally share it with you. And if you want to do something like this for your own project, like you have a script and you want me to take a look at it, by all means, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to do so, offering my services and that sort of thing. Um, and then also next week is going to be another scene of Nagging Rights. So we have plenty of scenes to talk about, you know. So let's pause this and then, yep, come back here. So, I mean, we have 3 different scenes that we can talk about. and there are others that I haven't even added yet. So we have a lot to talk about throughout this entirety of what we've filmed. And so stay tuned for that. And then also that's happening on Wednesdays, typically at noon on all of the socials. So YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, and also Instagram. And then on Thursdays, that's when we talk about the investing side of it. We talk about things like this. Let me show you. So we talk about like the investment deck, the deal memo, the project appendix, stuff like that. So here, this is what it took to get to the investment, you know? And so we're talking about this particular project-based investment versus, a company investment. So we're talking about all these different things about building a studio and building uh, a distribution, I'm not distribution, but a process that people can invest into. So it's really cool to be able to talk about these things. But in addition to finding outside investors, how do you invest in yourself? So we talk about, day trading. We talk about some other ways to essentially earn income that you can scale in order to get to um, what you want to do for your creative endeavors. And so those happen on Thursdays at 12 p.m. as well. And then again, Saturdays are the typically the gaming stuff is going to be happening around, again, I think noon is a great time for me personally. So I'll keep it at noon on Saturdays unless, we find out that the gaming stuff doesn't really work out at that time. But that's really about it. If you want to find out more about any part of this process, if you want to if you're interested in hearing more about this investment deck, I am running a webinar on Wednesdays, just going into details as far as like what film investment looks like, what do you call it? Basically, how do you make money as an investor in a film? And then also, what are you going to be investing in if you decide to partner with us on that journey? So those are happening on Mondays, beginning on at 1 p.m. I'm still working out the details, so I'll keep that. What do you call it? I'll post that once I have a specific time and date when we are going to start that. But that's going to be happening on Mondays coming up in the next week or so. So if you want to know more about that, shoot me a DM, an email, whatever, and I'll get you those details as well. But for now, we're gonna end it here. I appreciate everybody rocking with me. Walking through this breakdown is really cool to break it down with you, and I can't wait to share more with you. All right, but until next time, peace.